Hey everybody, happy Thursday and welcome to my space. I love hanging out here even more than like my living room with my big fluffy couch. If you're new here, I'm Jenny and you're listening to Life Take Two, the podcast for anyone who's ever had to start over and after that life reboot thought, let's do things a little differently. I'm, of course, Jenny Gage, writer, grandma, mom, podcaster, survivor, and your internet big sister. And this show is a place for other survivors. So I have John here today. First, let me play my intro, and then I'm going to turn it over to you. Gage, and this is Life Take Two. I don't know if I did that as smoothly as Maven would have.
No, it was great.
Hi, John. Want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hey, everybody that's listening or might watch, I'm John. I'm what I think is just a regular guy, but maybe with some views that I feel like some other people out there, especially men, need to get a little bit better. So I'm here to talk.
So I've been calling you the Feminist Dad. And I mean, honestly, that was my first impression of you. I was scrolling my TikTok one day. I came across your live and I was instantly shocked by the words coming out of your mouth. And that was my first thought. Who is this feminist dad over here on TikTok schooling the boys and telling them how to be? So that's kind of how I know you. John and I sat down 2 days ago and we talked about his ideas and some of his personal practices in his own home and in his life and what he's trying to do out there in the world. And John, I have to say, I've interviewed a lot of people in the past 6 years that I've been on social media. I have 400,000 followers over on TikTok. I have some amazing subscribers here on YouTube, and I've had all kinds of documentaries and interviews and things. And I don't think that I've ever rewatched one of my own shows as many times as I did with our dialogue together. So anyone who's just watching, hop over and catch that interview with John from 2 days ago. It says Feminist Dad right in the title. And here's why I think it was so impactful for me. My great grandma had to fight to vote. My grandma had to fight to have a job and an education. My mom's generation fought to have bank accounts, credit cards, and keep their own money when they had those jobs, and body autonomy and all that stuff. A lot of things happened during my mom's generation, and they thought that they were passing this beautiful world of gender equality onto me. And yes, I can have a job and a bank account and all those things. But I realized after our conversation the other day that the reason this war hasn't been won, despite winning so many battles, is that the men at home haven't changed. So what's happened in a lot of our lives is we as females think this is a bold new world for us, and we're out there having the jobs and doing the things, and then we're still coming home and we are cooking the dinner, doing all of the housework, and still very much gender inequality within our own four walls. So I have a little video that I want to play for you, and then I want to jump into that. I don't know if you've seen this guy. He's over on TikTok. I'll put his link in the description.
It's about fear. It's about boys told never to cry growing into men who don't know how to love. It's about a generation of men who were promised the world and now can't make eye contact with it. So if you want to be loved, be worth loving. Not with a six-pack or a sermon, but with kindness, with truth, with the terrifying, liberating act of being real. And if you can't do that, if you'd rather stay in an echo chamber and double down on the fantasy and chase cartoon women through an algorithm built by men who hate you, then by all means, be lonely. But don't blame women for it. Defiance till death.
All right. I'll put the link in the description. I absolutely love him. He's talking about the male loneliness epidemic there. And basically, men are raised in a certain way and they're not loving their partners in the right way. And after our conversation the other day, I was just thinking to myself, I have so many friends, because I'm 50, who've gone through those midlife divorces. And myself included, not because they didn't love their husbands, not because their husband got a little fatter, or because they didn't like his sports teams, or they didn't love almost everything about them anymore. Most of my friends got divorced because they didn't feel loved And because they felt like those the married single mom, have you heard that phrase before, married single moms?
Oh, yeah.
And that's, I would say, the number one cause of divorce amongst most of my friends. If it wasn't, adultery or abuse or other things, it was just, I feel completely alone in my house. And it's all the stuff that you're talking about. So, John, I want to hear from you. What is it that you're hoping to do out there? What do you think the problem is? And what do you think the solution is?
Yeah. I have to say too, I did not know that creator, but I love that little video we just watched. I think that's basically in line with everything I'm about to say and what we're going to talk about. And also I love the juxtaposition of what somebody might typically think. He might look away that some people would think are the opposite of the way that we're talking in the message that he just shared. And I think that that's really important for men of all flavors and all looks, right? To have what I think are respectable views.
He's from Arkansas, born and raised, and he's called on TikTok Defiance 13. And I encourage anybody, he has like poetry and prose about liberalism and gender roles and all kinds of beautiful things. So he's incredible. Yeah, you wouldn't expect this guy with the Arkansas accent and the beard and the hat to be talking about male loneliness and how it's men's fault. So totally encourage you. You would love him.
Yeah, no, I'm going to check him out when I see him in the link after this. So I'm out here doing something that I think is important, right? And I think, Jenny, based on our talk, you agree to. Lots of these viewers might agree. But I like to think that other people should learn from other people's mistakes or experiences. And I'm certainly not the most well-versed person ever in any regard, but I definitely have relationship and parenting lessons learned. I also take lessons that I see from folks around me when things go well or don't go well. And I thought, hey, maybe I should get on TikTok because I see these videos that get millions of views or millions of likes. The one that kind of set me off was that it implied that women should not be able to vote, right? It started based on a conversation about like they need to clean, they need to cook, they need to whatever. And it went all the way to, they shouldn't even be allowed to vote. Either their vote should double up with their husband or they should not be allowed to vote. And that got me really fired up. And I decided, if millions of young men, millions of young potential breadwinners, partners, whatever, one day are hearing that message and liking that, it's up to people like me or Defiance 13 to come online and make sure that we combat that. So since then, and it's only been a couple of weeks that I've been doing the live thing and about 2 months since I've been posting online, I get online and I kind of have a catchy title, right? I think the one I go with most is even when somebody pays all the bills, they should still help at home and with the kids. And I believe that.
So you're live streaming over on TikTok.
100%.
Everybody needs to go watch your TikTok. Follow John and just catch his lives. Send them to your boyfriend. Send them to your husband. Send them to your daughter's boyfriends and husbands and whatever. And your live stream to me is everything that I've ever wanted to hear a man to say. Awesome. And it just like gives me goosebumps head to toe.
Yeah.
But why do you feel why did you feel like that was your place? Like, why aren't you just like, yeah, buddy, women should vote with their husbands or they shouldn't vote at all? Like, what made you as a man jump off of what you hear a lot of men out there saying and what our culture still kind of clings to and decide to kind of swim against the current?
Yeah, sure. It's two main reasons. I have a beautiful, love her to death 5-year-old daughter, and I don't want her to grow up and be in a world where she is told to be a good partner or mom or wife, whatever she is going to become, that she has to clean because that's what 2 X chromosomes were meant for, right? Like I refuse to accept that as my daughter's future. So I'm trying to make my small part there. And then my other reason is because I've grown so much with my own wife. Like I've always gotten this better than some, but I've only gotten as good at this as I feel like I am now. And as much as she would say now that I am in the last year or two. And I want to help others maybe before they make some of the same mistakes or have some of the same hardships that I have.
So your relationship is kind of the guinea pig. You've been doing things a little bit differently. Like you sent me a picture of dinner that you cooked and we've been podcasting and you were working, you work full time from home. And then you're like, oh, and by the way, here's this homemade flatbread and what hummus and all kinds of stuff to go on it. And your wife is a stay-at-home mom, right?
She is, yeah.
And you have a little 5-year-old daughter, and yet you don't just automatically assume, hey, my wife should cook dinner because she's staying at home and I'm working. Like it looked delicious, it looked amazing, and I bet that your wife feels really loved. So your home is this little test kitchen for how can we divide up the responsibilities and have a little bit more quality. And it's working for you. Like, what are the results? Why do you say that it's working for you?
Yeah, I mean, I am happy, and I know now, both from like my read on things and because she will tell me that we are happier than we've ever been. Right. Like you can tell body language, you can tell from knowing a person, we've been together 7 years. I know when she smiles brighter than she smiled 2 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever. And when she says, I'm happy, I love our life, I love what you do, I know now that she's happier now than she was yesterday or the day before or 5 years ago. And I am too, right? The things that I do different now that I consider myself as doing better, no part of it makes me think day to day, oh, I do too much now and I'm not more happy, right? Like my daughter gets more of me, my wife gets more of me, our entire household is happier, even if I hung up like a video game controller or something in favor of cooking dinner or taking out the trash. So,
What was your life like 4 years ago? Were you
yeah,
cooking homemade flatbread and doing
yeah.
laundry and letting your wife go paddleboarding in the morning while you were taking care of the daughter? Like,
Yeah, and I think the mistake that we made, our particular situation, which again, you guys should go back and watch the interview that Jenny's got on the YouTube. We talked about it, the renegotiation thing, right? How sometimes people don't go back to the table and say, "Hey, we shook hands on the agreement maybe 5 years ago before the kids were born. Like, are we still happy? Are we doing what we're supposed to do?" So when we shook hands, it was, "Hey, let's make the most money possible." Like I was making enough money, but if we could Airbnb out the bottom of our home, if I could grind and start a second business, whatever I could do so that I could retire 5 or 10 or 20 years earlier, that was the absolute most important thing. And then over the 3 or 4 years that we were pursuing that, I ignored or did not consider important enough the signs that were obvious that day to day, like daughter and wife were not happy. Right. And I just kept my head down. I said, this is what we shook hands on. Everything I can do to retire at 60 instead of 65, that is of the utmost importance. And it only took, unfortunately, a really bad point in our relationship where we had to come together and say, how come we didn't renegotiate 2 or 3 years ago? Right. And like really open up about where we're at, for me to finally wake up and say, if I don't change, there might be a day where the renegotiation is us not being together. And that absolutely is not worth it ever.
well, and
If you
that's
love that
most of my
person.
friends. Like most of
Yep.
my friends, like over the years, they know that they're not feeling loved and supported at
Yeah.
home because the truth is human beings bond through communal work. And our capitalistic system has the men going out and working and the women working at home. And when you do it like that, when you have that division of labor, then you're actually missing out on a lot of really crucial bonding.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt very disconnected from my husband of 24 years, partly for that reason. Like we didn't
Yep.
ever work together within our home, and I obviously wasn't going out like working his job with him most of the time. So you miss out on that connection. And it also creates this dynamic where as a woman, I felt like a servant. I felt like I'm doing all of his cooking, all of his cleaning, I am taking care of all his stuff for him. And he's going out there and working, but that money is just depositing in the account. He's not doing anything directly for me. Like little things like just clear my plate at the table. Like I clear yours every night. Like just once, just pick up my plate, put my silverware, wash it, put it in the dishwasher would have made me feel so loved. So yeah, I mean, all my friends are like year after year after year, we are disconnected.
Yep.
We're feeling like we're servants. We're not appreciated. We're not even enjoying our lives. And we have all this resentment built up towards our husband. So finally it comes to a head and boom, it's the divorce after 20 years or 24 years or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. I don't know that we'll ever avoid having to have these conversations and renegotiations, but I think it's important that when the person that might be staying at home or maybe pulling more than their fair weight after they're done with their 9 to 5, I think it's important that they feel loved and safe and whatever enough that they can come and say, hey, can we talk about maybe the agreement that we made a little while ago? And also for the other person that might make a little bit more money to be able to say, yeah, I love you. Like, what do you need? Right. And not use money as some tool to get out of like supporting and making their partner feel seen. And I think sometimes people are like, they don't understand that that is the more important thing than maybe their self-preservation in the moment, right? Or like their selfishness that they want to kick their feet up and relax too much.
So, what do you hear from men out there on the street? Because on your lives, you have these little titles where, like, even if you make all the money, then you should still come home and cook dinner or whatever, like some of your leading topics. What are you hearing from the men?
Yeah. I mean, Maybe surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, I'd say about 50% of the people that you can clearly tell are men, profile pictures, names, whatever, they are really supportive, and that's encouraging. So for anyone listening that says that like all men except for John on on this live are the same, I promise you that there are men out there that get this and are willing to have this conversation. The discouraging part, the part we're trying to tackle, is the other 50%. I'd say about half the people that come in and disagree, they come in guns blazing. Right? They say like, that's a woman's job. They call me names, that whatever they want to do, they come in absolutely guns blazing. And the unfortunate reality is that those people either can't or are choosing not to think critically, right? They're not even willing to engage in the conversation. They're just showing their cards of how they think. I still tried to talk with them, but that's a tough battle. And then there's a small fraction who come in and disagree, and we can't have good conversations. I feel like I've made a difference to at least one or two of them that have seemingly budged a little bit and have been affected by the conversation. And then some of the other ones are going to take time, but we certainly go back and forth.
If you had met me 7 years ago, then I would have actually been one of these people that totally, like in your comments, was like, you were dumb. Jesus wants men and women to have different roles. Like there's the pink jobs and the blue jobs. And
Yep.
John is out there trying to destroy the family because the Bible has a lot of gendered stuff that pastors kind of lift and twist for an American capitalistic nuclear family context that just in the greater Christian realm has always been pushed. Even like the Adam and Eve thing being passed down, man is the head of the home, woman was taken out of his rib. And in Mormonism, we had a specific commandment. It was a revelation from our prophet called the Family Proclamation. And it spells out women are designed to nurture, men are designed to provide for their families. So the Mormon prophets commanded for generation after generation that women are supposed to stay home, come home from the typewriters, come home from the laundromats, and be a wife and mother. And I belong to all kinds of different trad groups. Like I'm just in there as a spy. And in these trad wife groups, they're always quoting, the Corinthian, or not Corinthians. What is the Old Testament?
I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, I think
Proverbs,
that they've probably come in and shared it in my life.
Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, like the Proverbs 31, and like you were going against the Bible, and I felt like within that biblical system and Mormonism on top of that anyone who suggested that my husband was supposed to come home and cook dinner, or that men and women were equal, or that it would be okay for me to go have a job, those people were defying God and destroying traditional family. And so I would have fought against it just out of absolute blatant fear. And the problem is I would have been basing my whole entire life off of a 2,000-year-old book and what my bishop and pastors and people said, and never engaging critical thinking. And that's why my marriage sucked, because for 24 years, there was no critical thinking. I lifted that recipe, the biblical marriage, the Mormon prophet recipe for marriage. I lifted that recipe and I carried it into my home. And even though it wasn't working and I was miserable and he was miserable and we were all miserable, I still thought, well, this is tradition. This is God. And it was actually the critical thinking and starting to realign what was authentic for us that led me to the end of religion and the marriage and everything, and out the other side. The critical thinking and implementing some of those new things just kind of broke the bubble. And that concept fell. So if you have those religious people, like let's say I was old Jenny, if I was MAGA, Christian, Mormon, biblical marriage, nuclear family Jenny from 7 years ago, and you got to sit down with me for 5 minutes and talk about pink and blue and gender roles within the home and relationships, what would you suggest? What would you say?
Yeah, it's one of the harder things to deal with, because when people have convictions, religious convictions are some of the most strongly held, right? So it is difficult, but I typically try to make them realize or remember, and I think many of them understand this, even if they don't say it out loud, that the books that they're referring to say a lot of stuff that is not the same way in 2025. There was a lot of stuff beyond this man, woman, husband, wife conversation that if they went out on the streets and did it in 2025, everyone around them they'd be in cuffs, right? They'd be in prison. So even if, like I try to avoid the whole religion's not a thing, religion's a thing in these lives, because I know I can't get through maybe on that angle. But my thought is stuff has changed over time. Like God has made, man and women and everybody, if he's out there with the capacity to feel equally, think equally, whatever. So if half of us, if 4 billion of us that have the capacity to think and feel equally are told, hey, even if most of you don't like this situation, it said so in that book 2,000 years ago, so get used to being unhappy, that doesn't seem reasonable. If he's out there, if he's all loving and he's all powerful, and he made half of us, right, the women, I guess, from the book, with the capacity to think and feel just like men, right, maybe just with like less muscles and they can childbear, then I don't think that he would want half the population to be told, and even if it upsets you, you better do the dishes for the next 60 years. That seems unreasonable. I don't think he would want that.
So I had a former pastor, when we were on the topic of trad wives, he was writing an article about trad wives, and he dropped this scripture on me from the Bible. And I'm an atheist, so I, don't believe that the Bible is real. I mean, it's real, but I don't believe that it's religiously
It's definitely a book, right?
It's a book. It's definitely a book. So he dropped this scripture on me. He's like, so the Bible itself actually preaches against the traditional family. First of all, men and women biblically, like in that time, would have had home-based businesses, and the women, like so many women in the Bible, were working. Like they were working both in the religion, like in the Jewish community, like there's prophetesses and people like that, and then they were working side by side with their husbands. They had home-based businesses. They didn't have a traditional family where a man took a briefcase and went out. But he drops a scripture from Luke on me, which is Martha and Mary. And Martha is in the kitchen. She's cooking. I'm so sorry. My throat. And she goes out and she's like, hey, Jesus, I need Mary, because she's a woman, to come in and help me. And Jesus says, no, she's chosen the better part. She's out here with the men discussing the scriptures. So Jesus himself is like,
You're totally good.
Anyway, yeah, the Bible supports all kinds of different gender roles and not just a woman in the kitchen.
Yeah, and I think like some of the passages that people will come in and I'll read them on live. Like I don't know them off the top of my head, but people will certainly come in. They'll say, "Have you read this?" And I pull them up. Like I'm happy to read them. I think it's normally one of two problems beyond the times change, right? Like my argument still stands that time changes. One of the two things is unless you know how to translate directly the original Bible, there's a lot of words in there that are meaningful enough so that people like you and me who speak English in 2025 can understand it, but they don't always mean exactly what we think they mean, even if it is the English word. So I think one of the passages that is in there, somebody cited the other day, mentions that the woman is supposed to be the helper to men, which I think in this conversation, people will argue nowadays. They will say, helper is less than, right? You are my assistant. You do what I need you to do. And then I will see on the other turn somebody that speaks Hebrew and like is a Bible scholar who knows how to translate, who says that there are other passages who say, I forget if it's that God is a helper to man or that man is a helper to God. And certainly like the translation from the direct Hebrew or the original language, whatever it is, doesn't suggest helper in that context was any lesser than. So I think people like to pick and choose sometimes based on their view or the time period, how they want to use something to argue their point. But again, I think ultimately, if that book is real and there's somebody out there and they're all loving, they wouldn't tell 4 billion of the people that they made in their image that they're lesser than. That doesn't make sense to me.
I believed that. I believed deeply that I was literally less than my husband.
Yeah.
And that was my life. And I acted accordingly.
Yeah.
So
well, I have to.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, I have to say, like, I'm sorry that happened. Although it's in the past and you're doing great and whatever. But I'm also glad that you did what you needed to do for you. Like it seems like you're happy and thriving, right?
I am, but I'm happy and thriving because I'm with a different partner now, and I'm outside of that system. And that was such an eye opener to me when I got divorced, and then I started dating people who had been raised in a really different way and who saw me differently than my Mormon husband had seen me. It's funny, like the first night that my partner Kevin spent at my home, we were going to go somewhere that morning, and I had already gotten in the shower. So this is our first night that he's ever slept over, which is such a big deal. And while I was in the shower, I had all these laundry baskets in my bedroom, and I get out of the shower, I walk into my bedroom, and Kevin, he's gorgeous new boyfriend. I mean, not that new, but kind of new boyfriend. And he's in there in my bedroom folding my laundry. He was like, he had like my socks and my undies and my little t-shirts and my Lululemons and stuff. And he was folding my laundry. And I was 45 years old. I had never had a man fold my laundry. My husband would have never folded my laundry. And it made me feel so uncomfortable. I told him to stop. I was like, don't do that. Like, you don't have to fold my laundry. It made me feel worthless because, like, if he's folding my laundry, if I'm not folding his laundry, then why is he going to love me, type of thing. But it was so shocking to me to just have someone actually do something to help me. And what happened was then I got spoiled, and now I'm so used to it that like it's amazing. And my life is happy because I'm with a partner who doesn't see pink rolls and blue rolls.
Yep.
He views our household as this is a joint venture. And sometimes Jenny's going to have the time in her schedule that she can do more parenting or more cooking. And sometimes I have time in my schedule that I can do that. And neither of us are really the servant to the other. We are partners. And that's why, like, we talked on My Life the other day about Kevin's not my husband. We had a church wedding. He calls me his wife, but I call him my partner because I'm an atheist and we are domestic partners. And that word is actually so meaningful to me. Husband to me did have that context of all the religious, like he's the head of the wife. Partner, we're equals. We are side by side doing life together. And that's why I'm happy.
Yeah. And I love that and respect that. I think I told you maybe the other day, but if it's not already clear, me and my wife are not particularly religious. But we still happen to call each other husband and wife. Like, we kind of just accept that it's the norm. But when there's some people who disagree come into my live, and then I start talking, and there's one guy who keeps popping in who is obsessed about the fact that I'm willing to call her my partner. He keeps calling me out that I just don't subscribe to husband and wife only. And I tell him every time, like, it's not more important that we are husband and wife. It is more important that we are partners, and that is what we are. We happen to call each other husband and wife, but we act as partners, not as whatever he considers husband and wives to be.
So what does that word mean to you? Like, when you say the word partner, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? What does that mean that your wife is? What are some other synonyms?
Yeah, I mean, co-captains, teammates, right? Like, I'm not the captain and she's not the team member. We are teammates together under whatever this crazy household is, whoever our captain is, or we are co-captains. 50-50 is a good phrase. Maybe not on every individual little thing, right? Like, I work, she stays home, but overall 50-50. Best friends, right? Like, I've never been in a best friendship before where, like, my best buddy puts in 80% of the effort and I put in 20. Like, we hang, we both have a good time. We both do the hard work. So we're best friends, right? I'm not a friend who's got her on speed dial to do what I need her to do. We're besties.
I love that. The 50-50 thing, I do think that people misinterpret what that means. 50-50 to me is like if you're investing in a business. I used to build homes. My ex-husband and I had a home building company together. And some of your investors are going to be monetary. Some of them are going to bring in, like, we had an architect who invested with plans and times and, design. And sometimes you're going to be the labor guy. Sometimes you are investing in the project and you're the one who's actually laying the foundation or framing or something like that. Not everybody has the same exact investment. So in these 50-50 relationships, I would certainly say that Kevin and I are 50-50. He makes a considerable amount more money than me because he had a job and a degree, and I did not. I was a trad wife for 24 years. And it's not always like I cook half of the dinners and he cooks half the dinners. The 50-50 to me means that each of us is 100% invested in the relationship. He's bringing half of everything that he has. I'm bringing half of everything that I have, that half of it, and we're both contributing. But I do think that a lot of people, when I discuss 50-50, they do think, well, then you're going to pay half the rent. You're splitting this down the middle. You're going to do the dishes every other day. And that's not the way it works. I certainly do more cooking, but I also have some culinary education underneath my belt. And after 24 years of trad wife life, I'm a gourmet chef over here, right? Kevin, I had to teach him how to fry an egg. So we don't always split things 50-50, but it is that 100% investment.
Yeah, and I think 100 is more accurate and also kind of gets rid of that negative connotation of, okay, but who's doing 50% of the bills? Who's doing 50% of the dishes? Instead, it's just, we are always putting in lots of effort because relationships and parentships are lots of effort. And in that 100 is sometimes me giving you a break. And in your 100, sometimes that's giving me a break. And obviously some time together, right? Like people in love often should spend time together. But I think 100 really gets at it more. And I think it's also important for young people to not think that it's 50-50, as in 50% of their time when they're done with work, they're just going to have all this time to play video games and hang out with besties and whatever. Like being a parent and being a partner as an adult takes way more than 50% of your time, whether it's work or stay at home or bonding time with your kids and partner. So I think 100 is a lot more meaningful as a fraction to describe this.
We need to just rebrand it. Can you come up with like new lingo? Because 100, that's a lot of syllables. We just need to rebrand the whole 50-50 thing, because I don't think that it lands. You told me that I had 30 minutes. Do you need to hop off and get on another call right now, or do we have time for 2 more questions?
I think we could do 2 more quick questions. I've got like 5 minutes if we need it.
Okay, so first of all, if we want to have these beautiful, like gender neutral partnerships within our homes and just break down the whole patriarchy, break down the pink and the blue, let's say you were a newlywed couple, and let's back that up. Let's say that you're engaged, you're about to get married. What conversation should you be having before you put that ring on it to make sure that we are creating this beautiful space in our relationships? What would you suggest?
Yeah, I think broadest conversations, I mean, important, and it'll be specific enough what I'll say, but you can't predict the future, right? And if you're just getting engaged, like you don't have a child yet, you don't know what job you're going to have in 9 months, whatever, it's really hard to overanalyzing it too specific. But I think the important broad conversation to have is like, will you love and respect me and realize that you don't live my 24/7, but when I say something's great, when I say I need help, I want to know that you love and respect me enough that you'll be willing to have that conversation and accept it, even if your instinct or your lack of my personal context or whatever tells you different, right? Like, I love you. I wouldn't lie to you. If I tell you I'm stressed, I need help, please take it seriously. And then I think the second and maybe most important thing is the renegotiation, right? If we have something working and in a year or 2 or 5 or 10, I or you need something different, can I feel safe to sit down at the table and say, I love you. You're not any less than a partner or a man or a woman or whatever because I need something different, but it is time. Are you going to be okay with that conversation? Because it's going to hurt feelings or it's going to feel hard, but I need to know that you're okay with that conversation. I think that those would be helpful.
That renegotiation is so important, and that can feel very personal. And I think that that's why it's really important too, to separate the houses or the tasks within the home and childcare and work and all that stuff from the relationship. And Kevin and I have done that beautifully. Like, our relationship is our relationship. What happens in our home, that's running the house, and they're totally separate. Okay, then my last question for you is, you said that one of the reasons you got fired up to get on TikTok, and please hop over to John's lives, they are incredible, and tell men to grow up and let's be feminists at home, which is really what you're doing. You said that your daughter was one of those inspirations for you, and she's about 5 now, right?
Yep.
I think those the daughter daddies, like, they are some of the biggest feminists right now that I've ever heard. So what type of a home, what type of a partner would be that dream partner for your daughter? If you could just handpick, this is what I would like my daughter's life to be like someday when she grows up and falls in love, and you hand her off to her partner.
Yeah. I mean, certainly I talk even in my lives with people that disagree with me. I'm like, hey, every relationship is different. Like, if there wasn't room for nuance in this, I tell everybody, you better work at home, right? And get on TikTok live and do everything exactly like I do, live exactly where I live. So there's got to be room for some of that nuance. So without predicting the future, I think I want her to see that me and mom love each other enough to have those hard conversations, but that leads us to being able to be partners, co-captains, best friends. So I think the best thing that I can hope for her is that whatever makes her feel like a co-captain, that she's safe and willing and smart enough to have that conversation with her future co-captain, and that she doesn't settle until she finds somebody that is meant to be her co-captain, right? I don't want her to fall in love or attracted with somebody that says, but I need you to stay home and clean, if that's something that doesn't make her feel equal or supported or whatever. She needs to find a new teammate.
I love that. So your nightmare then would be if she became a little stay-at-home mom who just pandered to every desire of her husband, and she had to do everything and felt burnt out and lonely and isolated and like she was a servant.
Yeah, exactly. She should never feel like she has to keep her mouth shut, because that's what married women do, right? That is my absolute fear, and I'll do everything in my power to empower her to not ever feel like she needs to stay in that.
All right. Well, one of the mottos of the current feminist movement is for our daughters. That's our battle cry. That's one of them. So
I'm
daughters
with
for
it.
everything. Okay, everybody go catch John's lives, and please watch the video that we did together this week. He's absolutely incredible. The more that we can support men's voices as they push for change, the better our lives are. Because if the men aren't on board and within our own homes, we're still servants, we're still just doing their every beck and call, and we aren't supported in building the lives that we want to build, then our only two choices are continue to be the married single moms, continue to be the little wifey at home pandering to the men, or just be single cat ladies. And while that certainly is a beautiful space for a lot of women, I have a lot of female friends who are single by choice, who are childless by choice. We as human beings are wired for connection. We are wired to be in intimate partnerships. And John, I believe, as you do, that we can carve out that space where men and women can come together within our homes, and we can have that equality, and we can support one another. And I think that that's absolutely the ideal. So
Totally agree. Yep.
I am so glad you're out there, and thank you for hopping on with me today. I'm going to wrap it, you guys. Thank you so much for joining and watching and commenting. And as always, be kind, and I'll see you on the other side. Bye, guys.
Thanks. See ya.